Hey, it's Matt here, and I want to talk about perspective. I was just here, just reflecting on, the fact that a perspective is a lot of times, very limited. And, when it comes to a perspective, everybody will have a different perspective. And that is just because it's based on their linear type of exposure that what they see. And sometimes what happens is that they see it as the reality. They see it as real. They see it as truth, and they see it as the only truth. And that's just a perspective, and that's just very limited to what that they've seen and been exposed to. And that's why I wanted to share this, because the perspective that people have and the perspective that we have and all individual human beings will have is a lot of times just very limited. And why I'm sharing this is that it's important to widen your perspective, widen how you see things, because chances are, growing up, you've probably seen certain ways, certain perspectives, certain ways to see things, right? And this was probably shared with family or society or people that you're surrounded with, people that you worked with would give you a certain perspective, and they would share this perspective with absolute truth and confidence, saying that that is the only way to see things. And sometimes we hear it so often that it becomes engraved in our mind, thinking that that is the only perspective to believe in. And so we stick with that perspective for the rest of our lives. And what that's doing is that it's preventing us from truly seeing the real perspective, the reality that's happening right in front of us, and seeing a whole lot of more opportunities around that. And let me explain a little bit more. Let me put it in perspective. Just for an example, I was listening to the book by Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, and one of the things that he was explaining about perspective is that we see the sunrise and the sunset, right? And the sun rises on a one spot, so based on where we are on this planet, so where we are physically on the surface of the planet, or maybe over above at a certain level, like maybe if we're in a plane or something like that, we got a very limited perspective of the sun, meaning that we see it rises on the horizon in the east and then goes and set on the west, right? However, if you really look at the sun from outside of the planet, the sun never stops shining. It's always, always shining. But we limit our perspective, and we have a limited perspective of where we are on the planet. And so what I mean about broadening your perspective and understanding that is that it's to take you away from this parallel, right? This parallel way of the perspective and the way that you see things. So meaning that when you step outside of that, then that's when you can see this broad perspective of everything about life, everything about your life, everything about whatever you're working on, whatever you are involved with. There's just sometimes we have this limited perspective, and then we stay within those parameters when there is a whole lot of perspective. And one way to explain it, and another way to put it in perspective, from this standpoint, it's funny because I'm using perspective to explain about perspective, but if you're using, let's say just this little piece here, let me just find something here. Let me just use my wallet here, right? So let's say this is one way to see things, this is one perspective. What we're missing is that it's everything around this, right? So 360 around this, 3D, so front, back, side to side, up, down, has this unlimited amount of perspective, unlimited universe around that. So meaning that there's not just a one way to see things, and sometimes we stay stuck to that. And that's why it's important to stay open to perspective and not seeing it as just being the right or wrong or the good or bad. It's just that everybody has different perspective. We all have different perspective. There's different ways to seeing things, and it's just a matter of accepting all of it. Just accepting it, not meaning that you need to say that this is how I'm going to believe things, but just understanding that it's okay. It doesn't matter if somebody else has a different perspective than you do, and it doesn't mean that it needs to alter your perspective in the way that you choose to decide to see it. But just understand that all these perspective doesn't matter outside of you. Right? What really matters is the perspective of how you want to see it and how you choose to see it on the inside, and what is in line with your inner self, and what is in line with your passions, your values, and in line with your authentic self, right? So your true self, and that's what matters at the end. You know, just what focus on that, but don't limit that perspective of only one way to seeing things. Open it up, broaden your perspective, broaden the way you see things, and choose and select the things that matters to you, that will provide you and best serve you in your life. And that's okay if you think that sometimes that might be selfish, but that's the best way to do it, because that's how you are able to tap into your true self. And when you're tapping into your true self, that's when you can best serve others. So that's what I wanted to share today. Just understand that perspective, a lot of times and most of the time, is very limited. So you have the choice. You choose what perspective that you want to choose, and what matters for you and what best serves you at this present time. Because perspective can change. Perspective of ways of seeing things can change over time. But it's just because it'll be depending on what serves you at that time. So at this time, just look for the perspective, be open for other perspective, and be open to see it, maybe open to, accept it as the way it is, and then say, you know what, that, you can choose whatever you want to believe in it or let it go. And that's how you are going to align yourself and really start putting yourself in line with your inner self. So I'll stop it here. Thanks for checking this out. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.